On the 18th of June 2023, at 9:30 a.m. 5 people sat in a submersible called Titan and dove in the sea. They were going to see the wreck of Titanic. The same historical Titanic ship that had sunk in the sea about 100 years ago. This was an extreme form of adventure tourism, and also expensive. Each person in the submersible had spent more than $20 million for the few hours of the tour. This trip was expensive because the Titanic's wreck was hidden deep in the sea. Specifically speaking, 3,810 meters below the surface of the water, this submarine started its journey under the water. It takes about 2 hours. To reach the depth of 3,810 meters at every 15-minute interval, this submarine sends a signal to the support ship on the surface of the sea, named the Polar Prince. For them, this was the only communication channel with the world. On that day, the 18th of June, it had been only 1 hour and 45 minutes of this submarine's dive into the sea, that suddenly it lost contact with the support ship on the sea. At 4:30 p.m. by the time when the submarine should have come back up after its tour. There is no sign of it. At 7:10 p.m., the team in Polar Prince decided to inform the U.S. Coast Guard. From here, a 4-day-long multinational search began. A large-scale search and rescue operation is carried out to find this submarine. Aircraft, ships, and robot vehicles were also used. Everyone had only one question in their mind: what happened to these passengers? The place where this submersible disappeared is in the Atlantic Ocean near Canada. Look at the map. 600 kilometers away from Newfoundland, a Canadian island. At this place, in the depths of the water, you will find the wreck of the Titanic, broken into 2 parts. The bow and the stern both lie about 800 meters away from each other. The Titan submarine that disappeared here was not a submarine but a submersible. These two words are very similar to each other, but there is a very important difference between these two words. Submarines have their own power. They can use a port to go into the sea and come out of the sea independently. But submersibles cannot do that. To launch a submersible into the water and for it to come back, a support ship is needed, a ship that is present on the surface of the water and is controlling everything. In Titan's case, this support ship was the Polar Prince. This entire operation was run by a company called OceanGate, whose CEO was Stockton Rush. By profession, he had been an aerospace engineer. In 2009, he founded the OceanGate Company, a private company whose purpose was to take rich people on deep-sea expeditions as tourism. This company started offering Titanic tours in July 2021. Before this, they offered tours of other shipwrecks and areas. Titan was not the only submersible of this company. Apart from this, OceanGate had 2 other submersibles, Antipodes and Cyclops. Antipodes could go up to a depth of 304 meters, and Cyclops up to 500 meters, but Titan was designed to go down 4,000 meters, 4 kilometers underwater. This is why this was the only submersible to go to the Titanic. At 12,500 feet, here is the ocean floor, where the Titanic wreck is lying. The pressure at this depth is almost 400 times the pressure on the surface. So, whichever submersible goes to this depth, its design should be thoroughly thought out. The window in the Titan submersible, which is called a viewport, was the biggest viewport that had been installed in any private submersible to date. The Titan submersible was not that big. It had the capacity to seat only 5 people. Its main body, which is called the hull, was made of carbon fiber. 2 caps were attached at the end, which were made of titanium. The total length of it was approximately 6.7 meters, and it weighed more than 10,400 kilograms. In its design, there were 4 electric thrusters outside, 2 horizontal and 2 vertical, through which it could be operated. Now, an interesting fact to be noted here, this sub was controlled by a video game controller. This is not as weird as it sounds. The US Navy also controls their submarines and the periscopes. The viewports to see outside, they control them with Xbox controllers. But yes, the entire submarine, Titan, was being controlled with a video game controller. This means that the pilot who was operating the submersible in the water was also using this video game controller. These submersibles go so deep into the water that the GPS doesn't work here. The communication to their support ship was carried on through a text messaging system. It is still unclear which internet connection was available on the ship. In the tweet, OceanGate said that they were using Starlink's satellite internet service to communicate. If we come back to this story of the 18th of June, then 5 people were on board this submersible that day. The first was 58-year-old British billionaire, Hamish Harding. He was an adventurer and a 3-time Guinness World Record holder. In 2016, he went to the South Pole with astronaut Buzz Aldrin. At one time, he did a 4-hour dive into the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench. And last year, he was part of the Blue Origin suborbital flight, which was started by the space exploration company of Jeff Bezos. The second passenger was Paul Henry Nargeolet, 77 years old. A former commander of the French Navy. He had visited the Titanic wreck 37 times. He was the director of underwater research for the RMS Titanic. The third and fourth passengers were a British-Pakistani businessman, Shahzada Dawood, and his 19-year-old son, Suleiman. He was the owner of one of the biggest companies in Pakistan. Suleiman's aunt had said that Suleiman was actually scared of going, but he went with his father to please him and to give him company on this journey. As we know, that day, the submersible was communicating with the support ship at every 15-minute interval. This communication stopped at 11:15 a.m. After this, no communication, and no signal is received. Despite this, it was expected that the Titan would resurface at 4:30 p.m., as scheduled. Because if by chance, this submersible would get stuck in the water, there was a way for the passengers to tilt it from inside and push it back and forth to bring it back up. This is done by removing the ballasts. Ballasts are an important part of big ships and submarines to provide stability. They are nothing more than heavyweights. At 4:30 p.m., when the Titan did not resurface, people in the support ship waited for a while, and then notified the U.S. Coast Guard at 7:10 p.m. After this, began the Great Race. The race against time, 96 hours, only 4 days of oxygen supply was available in Titan. So if a rescue operation had to be conducted, they only had 4 days to find the passengers alive. Often an emergency locator is installed on ships, which is called an emergency position indicating radio beacon, EPIRB. With the help of this, these vessels can be located. But it was not installed in Titan. Here, another problem was that even if Titan had come back to the surface of the sea, people sitting inside it would have died due to the lack of oxygen. Because there was no way to open this submersible from the inside. The door of this submersible could only be locked from the outside and opened from the outside. So whether the submersible was inside the water or on the surface, those 4 days were very critical. There's no other way out. On top of it, the search area was 25,000 kilometers. Imagine how difficult it is to find a van-sized submersible in such a huge area. But still, the rescue teams put their lives at stake. Initially, 2 American and 2 Canadian aircraft started this operation. Sonar was deployed by them so that they could detect signals even from underwater. 3 ships started the search from the surface, but as time passed, more ships started coming in for the search operation. Some remotely operated vehicles, i.e., ROVs, were also used here. These are basically a robot-type vehicles, no one sits inside it, but they can dive into the water and find things. and they are controlled from the surface of the water. 3 ROVs were searching for Titan. After 3 days of searching, on the 3rd day of the search operation, a sonar from a Canadian aircraft heard some banging noises. At half-hour intervals, some sounds were heard, like someone knocking on the door. Later, the U.S. Coast Guard also heard the sounds. Finally, on the 22nd of June, an ROV searching on the ocean floor encountered some debris. Around 490 meters away from the Titanic's bow, it was confirmed upon seeing the debris that the submersible had broken apart. The people who sit inside it have lost their lives. After searching some more, 5 pieces of debris were found in total. On the same day, the U.S. Coast Guard confirmed in a press conference that the banging noises they heard had nothing to do with this Titan submersible. Actually, the conclusion that was derived was that Titan imploded due to high pressure. The force of an implosion moves inwards, breaking apart due to being squeezed in. That is implosion. And catastrophic implosion means that the implosion happened so fast that the entire structure was destroyed, but it didn't even take a millisecond. This means that the people sitting in it were killed immediately in the blink of an eye, but they didn't feel it. The question here is, what was the reason behind this implosion? Actually, the main body of the Titan was made of carbon fiber, but usually, submarines and submersibles are made of steel, titanium, or aluminium. This carbon fiber design of Titan was an experimental design. No one had ever tested the properties of carbon fiber in such depths of the ocean before. And looking at this disaster, we can say that carbon fiber is not a suitable material for this use case. As said by an ocean explorer, Robert Ballard, the man who discovered the wreck of the Titanic in 1985, he said that they have done thousands of dives in different vehicles to get to the bottom of the ocean. But they have never lost a vehicle. This was the first time that a submarine or a submersible imploded in this way. If you look at our history, it's safer to be in a submarine like Alvin. James Cameron, the director of famous films like Titanic and Avatar, has been to the deep sea many times for various expeditions. He said the same thing. The caps of titanium were still intact on the sea floor unharmed, but the main body of carbon fiber is now scattered in pieces. He strongly criticized Titan, saying that safety regulations were not followed. If you see the old interviews of OceanGate Company's CEO, you will hear the same thing again and again. He said that the U.S. Passenger Vessel Safety Act of 1993 was needlessly prioritizing passenger safety over commercial innovation. He felt that this act was useless and that there was no need to pay so much attention to safety. In another interview last year, he said, "At some point, safety just is pure waste." After this, he says, "I've broken some rules to make Titan. I think I've broken them with logic and good engineering behind me." The rule stated that carbon fiber and titanium were not to be used. But he used them to break the rule, intentionally. Stockton Rush knew that he was conducting an experiment that could be very dangerous. In January 2018, OceanGate's Director of Marine Operations, David Lockridge, had actually mentioned safety concerns about Titan submersible. And when OceanGate did not pay any heed to the warning, he went to court with it. In the court, he stated that there should be a safety assessment and certification of this submersible. But OceanGate refused. He said that this company was not interested in spending money on safety. The legal battle in the court was eventually settled later in 2018. But on the 27th of March 2018, 36 people wrote a letter to Stockton Rush. The letter was written by industry leaders, deep-sea explorers, oceanographers, and other people. They said that the experimental approach being taken, not getting things quality checked, can lead to a terrible accident someday. To be a little conservative about safety. He had written that Rush was putting himself and his clients in danger. People used to blindly believe that the Titanic ship was so great it could never sink. In the race to reach the Titanic, Rush was accused of repeating the same phrase, that it was unsinkable. But on that ill-fated day, the ship sank, and now, the same happened with the Titan. In the pages of history, the name of Stockton Rush has now been included in this list of inventors who were killed by their own inventions. This teaches us that safety standards and regulations should never be ignored.